Ouachita One Table. Ouachita One Table podcast is a deeper discussion of issues facing our business communities. Over this series, we'll invite community leaders in businesses, the arts, nonprofits, culture, and government as we discuss the issues that strike at the heart of the Chamber's mission for the greater good of our parish. Topics such as workforce development, education, quality of life, economic development, and more. Ouachita One Table. This podcast is a partnership project of the Monroe and West Monroe, West Ouachita Chambers of Commerce and was produced by Godly Works Productions in the Louisiana Catalyst Podcast Studios at the Benoit Community Center. Now, here are your hosts, Roy Heatherly and Christopher Kelly.
Welcome to Ouachita One Table, a deeper discussion of issues facing the business community. I'm proud to be here. I'm Christopher Kelly with the West Monroe, West Ouachita Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Roy Heatherly with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce. And we're joined today by
Alice Prophit from the Living Well Foundation. And I couldn't be more excited to have you here.
Oh, you're excited.
I am.
I'm excited.
But you
We're
know,
proud.
I have to tell you, you wrote us a bio, and I want to read a little bit of it because it's exciting to me, because we just came off of a guest who had a booklet bio. So, you know, Alice, previously you were a healthcare consultant traveling, and so you have a beautiful history of work experience that speaks exactly to what healthcare industry is doing in our community, hopefully. But you're a professional singer and enjoy performing. Shameless plug, you have a brown bag coming up.
April 27th.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes,
And
yes.
my favorite part, though, is that she ends her bio and she says, with her husband, Harry, Alice enjoys traveling, the performing and applied arts, Epicurean adventures, and taking care of their two miniature Dachshunds. So good people
That's
are
our
dog
family.
people.
That's our family.
Awesome.
That's us.
So let's start by setting the stage. You know, maybe we don't know the history of Living Well. Maybe we don't know how it formed, the origination, and your mission.
Okay. Living Well Foundation was created from the sale of Glenwood Regional Medical Center back in 2006 when the public voted to sell the hospital to a for-profit entity. And so the monies were put into a foundation, a public charity, on behalf of the public. So the monies are used to the benefit of the public, so that we could do grants and initiatives back into the community.
Okay.
And
What
so
forethought.
Yeah. So you know, the money had to go somewhere, and it
Sure.
was to the public benefit, and there was a vote. So that money is invested, and we do grants and initiatives off of the earnings.
And so the principle is there to sustain.
Hopefully, till somebody votes to get
That's right.
spend it.
But you keep giving back.
We try to,
Yeah.
off the earnings.
Yes.
Public bodies are required to invest in certain investments in the state of Louisiana, and so it depends on what those investments do as far as how we can provide money back to the public. And in the state of Louisiana, that money is very conservatively invested, so we just have to roll with what
It
the
will
market
be there for the
does.
future.
Yeah.
So talk about your board, though. I think you have one of the most diverse and engaged boards
We have a
that I know.
fabulous board. We have a 12-member board made up of people across all kinds of vocations and interests and areas. Our board members have to come from certain residency qualifications because we're governed by specific governance between us and the bodies that formed us. And so, we have a really dynamic, active board. The greatest compliment I could ever have, or we could ever have, is that people have said, this is the most effectively efficient board I've ever served on. And that's a great compliment.
That is a great
Get the work
compliment.
done, respect their time, bring the decisions to them with all the information so they can use their gifts and abilities and experience to make wise decisions on behalf of the foundation.
So let's talk about those grants, though. It's a coalition. It's more than just, hey, here's a pile of money.
Right.
You build these bridges to allow something bigger to happen, right? So talk about that
Right.
granting process.
So the board will vote to have a grant cycle or to consider some specific initiative that has shown to be a big, large impact value to the communities. And so what we do is then vote to hold that cycle. And of course, COVID threw everything into disarray.
Sure.
of processes and need and how we address that. And so the grant cycle will open at a certain time, and typical to most funders, you apply for a grant online through a grant software portal.
Right.
And we define a priority and a focus, and the grant cycle will open, and folks will come forward and write for those projects. Now, because we're a public body formed from a public entity that was sold, the grants cycle will be based on got to be a Louisiana entity, got to serve Northeast Louisiana, the service area we have, got to be a nonprofit or a state, university or college, or a government entity. So there are restrictions on who can come ask.
So you just said something that I want to define, though, which is region. So talk about your area served. So it was the hospital was sold, but that was in West Monroe.
Right.
But you're applying that to our area.
Well, because Glenwood was a regional referral center, when the governance was struck, it was determined that we needed to serve basically where the patient base originated from for Glenwood. And so we serve 8 parishes that were designated through the work with the Attorney General on that service area. So it's the parishes close to what the economic development region of Northeast Louisiana is, close to what Region 8 is for healthcare.
So I'm Roy Heatherly. This is Christopher Kelly, and you're listening to Ouachita One Table, and we're talking to Alice Prophit with Living Well. So Alice, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I was honored to come to your lunch where you awarded grants, and tell me more about the lunch, what that was about, and can people watch that again? Is that on your website anywhere where they can see? Because it was a lot of it was like taped and videoed and everything.
Well, and Chris was so much help in this because when COVID hit, we used to have an in-person live luncheon.
Yes.
To celebrate and showcase the grants and initiatives and work of the foundation, but mainly who was doing what relative to the grants and projects. And that was hugely attended. It had become very popular. Over 400 people would come with COVID. We had to switch gears, and Chris saved the day really because he can do great video work.
Roy giving me a shameless plug.
Well, and so the chamber assisted us in putting on a live, or it's
live
virtual,
in quotation marks,
It's virtual.
Yeah.
But yes, the link is on our website right now, and it's still on Chamber, I think.
Right.
So
And what's
you
your
can
website
watch
address?
it. www.livingwellfoundation.net.
And
So you can see it.
Well, you talked a little bit, but give us some specifics on the diversity of the grants that were awarded.
So over the years, and one thing I want to clarify is the board did establish some specific initiatives outside of the grant cycle because we found that there was so much need and so much large impact made. Most funders want to know that you're touching as many lives as possible and you're sustainable. In other words, when your money goes away as the funder, the agency or the project can continue. And so there's 2 large initiatives that we have called School-Based Health Center Initiative, which is school-based full professional medical care on a campus of a school. And we start those up and fund those. And then another one is the Dental Hygiene Initiative, which is with ULM doing the dental hygiene clinics at Riser schools in West Monroe and the mobile dental hygiene unit. So we have those initiatives for funding. But when people write to us, depending on what the priority and focus is of the cycle, then the board, a committee will vote on the awards, then present it to the board, and the board will choose those. And so those grants usually fall into what's going to have a large impact, be sustainable, what's going to serve areas that have need, and COVID again changed a lot of that because you had people who were now without jobs and who needed services and assistance who never before would have. And so United Way, Salvation Army, us all shifted gears to broadly serve more people that we typically would not write into a funding parameter. And so COVID changed a lot of that.
But it also fostered creativity. One of the things that I learned in this beautiful collaboration that we had was, for example, the School of the Blind. You know, they were having exercise equipment. Can you tell about that project a little bit?
Yeah, so the School for the Blind in Ruston is a very unique setting in our whole Northeast Louisiana region as a place of service for the blind. And it's run by a bunch of great people. Pam Allen is great executive director there, but they needed some exercise equipment for the folks to work out because they couldn't access equipment at a typical gym. But the equipment they got helped them learn how to go to a gym and use any equipment that they could. So while we funded the equipment for them in their setting, it also was used for them to have apps on their phone to know how to access equipment at a gym
So
that's
again,
not necessarily
fostering another level, it had these
the ongoing
long-term-
ability to have health and well-being in your life, even through whatever you're facing, your challenges.
So when we were mentioning seed money that leads to, that's a perfect example.
Well, let me add to that if I can.
Always.
The great thing that we do at the Living Well Foundation, which is really exciting for me and very intellectually stimulating, I guess it's a lot of fun for me. You know, I love to brainstorm and problem solve. And so we bring people together and we talk about what if. Have you thought of? Right. Could you talk to Delta Community College? Could you talk to ULM? Could you talk to Tech? Could you talk to this agency that's already doing some stuff and you could broaden that? Because I kind of know the board's not going to grant projects that are dual duplications of something already going on. We want to see people collaborate and network together. And so we do that too. We bring people to the table to say, you need to know this person. Do you know this person?
And celebrate those achievements.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's really exciting to do that and to watch the lights come on and people go, hey, thank you for putting me in touch with the VISTA program at Louisiana Tech Children's Museum because they designed our pamphlets and projects and graphics for our big heart exhibit that you guys funded. And so we connected them and they went and did that.
This is a perfect example of bringing people to the table.
Together,
And you are listening to Ouachita One Table, which is a community podcast, a partnership between the West Monroe West Ouachita Chamber and the Monroe Chamber of Commerce. And we are proud to be joined today with Living Well Foundation CEO and President Alice Prophit.
Yeah, fun.
So you just mentioned that heart project, and I cut you off, but you got to back up and tell the story. You got to tell the story. So the Children's Museum wrote to you for a grant, but that had 3 more ramifications, right? Designing, implementing, and now it can be toured.
Yeah, so back up. Let me back you up. They wrote a grant that they were going to rent an exhibit that came from Oregon.
Right.
And they were going to put it in the Children's Museum and then take it into the underserved rural areas so kids could access it. And Melissa Say there is just fabulous on how she brings services to kids in areas that may not get to come to the Children's Museum.
Sure.
That's what we love funding about the Children's Museum. Well, the exhibit fell through from Oregon and it was real expensive to just rent it for a week. Okay, so Melissa and I got together and I said, Melissa, we don't want you to give the money back because we voted to give it to you, but you have to do something in the line of what that approval was for. And I said, is there something else you could do? So she went back, she thought about it, and she's very creative. And she called me one day and she said, let's have lunch. I want to talk about an idea. I said, great. So we got together and she said, Alice, instead of us renting an exhibit, do you think the board would support us designing and developing our own exhibit and building it, and then people could rent it from us, our first traveling exhibit? I went, are you kidding? That's what we're all about. And so they got with cardiologists and they got with Tech Vista graphics department and they got with other clinical professionals and they designed a bigger than a building heart, true to the anatomy of the heart, where the kids can go in, interactive, learn about it, and then they developed materials that were supportive to that exhibit. And that thing has turned out to be so exciting. She's always gushing with excitement about it, and I love to see where they took it.
Well, so. And it's and anatomically accurate. You know, the aortic valve flaps are there, and the tendons are It's pretty cool.
Amazing.
And my little nerdy heart happy to see.
It was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the kids can go in it, and they have all these interactive things they can do, and then they have, she can take it on the road. It pumps up with this tiny little pump. It fits on the floor. And they'll pump it up, and she sent me a picture recently where they took it to some convention, and it was the rage of the convention, and it was in the middle of an atrium in a mall or something, some convention center, because it's huge. But that's what we're all about is create it, do something. So now this project that they were going to rent for a week turned out to be something that they own and can take and do it over and over
Has
and over.
Longevity,
much more
and
impact.
Right. So let's talk about impact, though. COVID had impact, right?
Oh, yeah.
So COVID hits 2 years ago.
Yep.
Living Well, y'all are there. You have this mission. What happened? What'd you do? How did you pivot?
Yeah, during COVID, most businesses had to figure out a different way or send people home or not work or whatever. Well, that's exactly the time that we kick into gear. Things like, and we're not the only ones, there are many agencies that did. So we decided to change from our normal grant making cycle, which generally had a regular time frame to it.
Sure.
Well, that was just thrown in a ball and just shake it up and spit it out, and see what happens. And so we decided to change the grant cycle to have a special COVID cycle because it takes time to write for a grant, the board to evaluate and approve, and then get first checks cut. And so we decided we would move that process up quicker so the money could get out into the community quicker too. And so that project came about where we just shifted into gear, and we even let grant people who already had an existing grant from the year before and who were working it, they had to repurpose their grants because they couldn't get anything done, couldn't get supplies, couldn't get in schools, couldn't access where they needed to do their projects. So rather than, of course, give money back and they say, we can't do our project, we said, hold on just a minute. So I checked with the board and we let them repurpose that year existing grants so that they could get something done.
Respond to the need.
And so it was a huge year. I think at one time in the office, we had 54 active grants at one time with $1.5 million active. And it was like, wait, what grant are we on today? What, in the office, wait a minute, who are you calling? Which grant are you talking about? So it was a time of really just focusing to what the needs did. We talked with United Way, Salvation Army, a lot of the agencies specifically on, well, what can you do? They would call me saying, we don't know if we're going to be able to do this. I said, well, wait a minute, let's talk about what we can do. So we would brainstorm how to have a grant that was productive within.
You're making Roy smile.
It was something.
That fostering that community development is
we
amazing.
Shifted gears.
So how has that now impacted you? Looking forward, what has that done to your operation?
So, and I think every business is doing this. We're talking about how do we have a grant cycle or have initiatives or focus towards things that aren't just in the structure of our normal governance, the way we used to do things. And so we've talked about, what's interesting is it's time to redo our strategic plan. We do a 5-year strategic plan. And so we've talked about, well, let's talk about who the foundation really needs to be and wants to be right now for the impact we can make, because we know things are totally different. How are we structured? How do we do grant cycles? How do we interact with the universities and with the agencies and with government? And so we're in the midst of those discussions right now, and the board has just stepped into it wholeheartedly, and we're like, there's no bad question right now. Now's the time to say, what about, or have you thought of, or hey, I talked to so-and-so the other day and I'm thinking, man, that sounds large impact. So here, here's the deal. If we're granting based on the health and well-being of our population, we're not a workforce development place. We don't grant to workforce, but we did do a collaborative project with the University Nursing School Department's workforce development and Delta Community College to grant with Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation of Louisiana. We did a collaborative grant structure to help them put more nurses into school, because we funded an adjunct faculty member so they could get more nurses in, because that,
responding to the needs.
And then COVID hit, and so it's even more needed. So, but we're not typically workforce development. So we're even saying, wait a minute, after COVID, after pandemic and multiple disasters, health and well-being can be very broadly associated right now with, do I have a job? Do I feel successful in my own life? And so you can't really separate work, school, all these other things from what health and well-being may be. It's not just about medical health status or fitness and
so
health.
you see a transition, a kind of a turning point in what y'all may be open to.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We still have our basic governance for what we can fund, but how do we bring partners together more in ways that are in the current status of where we all find ourselves with the ongoing impact and then the recovery from COVID. And we don't think that you've seen that we've all seen the full impact yet of the mental health impact of COVID.
Yeah.
We just
Just
think
now happened.
it's just, we're not even there yet to see
Yeah.
what's going to be the long-term effect on kids and
Roy's
masks and
pointing at
school
me 'cause
boards. And
the conversation we had today was about mental health in schools
Yeah,
and mental
yeah.
health in the workplace, and maybe starting to have a response to that. What can we
That's
do
right.
to start that dialogue? Because if you don't start talking about it, then in that barrier, that glass ceiling doesn't get broken.
Yeah, and a lot of the models and evidence-based programs, even in the mental health industry, I think you're going to see some other things evolve from those, because like we're brainstorming right now about, wow, what if we could do a program with kids that helps them learn their natural gifts and abilities, because school doesn't teach you that.
Sure.
But you're happiest in life if you get to do those things that you're most good at and naturally good at. So along with your education, how do you include the things in your life too that are your natural gifts and abilities? So we're thinking about, how do we talk about that with school boards? How do we talk about that with business? How do we talk about that with any entity that wants to, brainstorm where that goes? And there's no definite answer right now.
Sure.
It's a lot of questions.
So Alice, in that keeping mental health in mind, last summer we did some roundtables, and you were part of that, and you were very vocal in your passion toward the industry, the healthcare industry, and what was going on with their workers and the frontline workers from two sides. One, they couldn't fill positions, but the burnout that nursing and healthcare professionals were experiencing. Teachers are in the same boat. I mean, you've got some professions that are really impacted by this. Is there a role that you're playing in that?
Well, just participating in the discussions, I
Yeah.
think. Of course, the foundation is certainly interested in where all that goes, and we talked to Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation of Louisiana with Michael Tipton down there a lot to get their input and expertise. But again, I think it's asking questions. I think it's thinking. One thing that I've learned in the healthcare industry is you got to think about this. Years ago, we could have people in the hospital for different arrays of services that weren't all so acute and chronically ill, and there were phases to move patients through in the hospital structure. That stuff has now moved out to outpatient or other areas. So basically, you have a lot of patients in the hospital that are, and I'm not meaning to be critical in any way, but sickest of the sick. Your hospitals the acuity levels are high, but yet we haven't changed our nursing model. And so the nursing structure of this many nurses used to take care of this many patients, or this nurse had this many patients. We in the healthcare industry, or those who are in it now, need to think about, and not that they're not, I'm sure they're all thinking about this, and they've certainly got their strategies and all, and they're all very wise people. But my question is, why are we trying to do some things with the old models when we need to change, not only based on the acuity level of the patients in the setting, but the workforce? Because you've got a totally different driven workforce. So at my age, I don't need to sit around and say what young people want. We need to talk to young people and say, what drives you? What do you want in a job? And we need to find a way to, we don't need to try to say what they want. We ask them, we talk to them. And I've met some amazing people that were even at the meetings we had. Right. I was like, we need to be talking to them. We don't need to be saying what they need. They need to be talking more than we are. And so I just think, you can gripe all you want to about the millennials or this generation or that generation, but I remember being young. I was pretty rebellious. I think we all were. Age does something to mellow you. And so...
That would happen? We get mellow?
In your own way. In your own way. And so, here's the thing about millennials is you can gripe about it all you want to, but you're not going to change them. That they have to go through life processes that change themselves. And so we need to figure out how to work with whatever workforce is out there and find out how to create settings that they want to work in. And we have to give them respect, and we have to be open to ways of interchange. But sometimes, you got to make the tough decisions for the group overall. And you don't make everybody happy, but you try to be just and appropriate and fair. Not that people aren't. And people know this. This is nothing wise sage here. But my thing is, we got to remember, healthcare it used to be modeled a certain way if you move through the continuum of a hospital. No, now the hospital has all the really tough stuff, and they even have to interact with their doctors differently. And the patients, once they get to a point of moving on, then they go out of that system somewhere else. And so are our nursing models really appropriate
To meet
for
needs
the
of today.
current
And then
structure?
tomorrow, is what is it drifting on with telehealth
Yeah.
and all that?
And we've got to make those careers exciting. We can't make it sound like, oh, you're going to be a nurse by the bedside. Ugh. No, that's one of the main places of
You're
great
there in
delivery
the
of
person's
care.
most time
That's
of
that's
need.
very important.
Sure.
Storytelling.
So Alice, we are so excited
Sorry.
to have you here. No, oh my gosh,
got off.
your enthusiasm is making us both smile. I
Yeah.
keep looking at Roy and he's
Yeah.
having the same emotion. Alice, thank you for what you do for our community.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. I enjoy it.
Please convey to your board how valued
Yes.
we think that they are. This has been Ouachita
thanks.
One Table, and our guest this week is Alice Prophit from the Living Well. Alice, tell them where they can find out more information online about your organization.
Well, we'll have a grant cycle open May 1st, so you need to go think about your projects right now. Go look online at www.livingwellfoundation.net. Go to the grants menu and go down and read the information. We published it about what the cycle will be about.
Alice, too, what can the chambers do to help you?
To help the foundation?
Yes.
Get our message out. Let people know that there will be a funding cycle open. So
Okay.
I'm speaking immediately, but also let people know, say, hey, have you talked to the foundation? If you hear ideas, if you hear things going on, bring us to the table sometimes and let us interact in ways.
And we'd love to do that. Thank you for being our guest, and
Oh,
thank
you're
you for
welcome.
what you do.
Thanks for
This is-
asking me.
This is Ouachita One Table. I'm Christopher Kelly with the West Monroe, West Ouachita Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Roy Heatherly with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for being with us.
Ouachita One Table. Ouachita One Table podcast is a deeper discussion of issues facing our business communities. Over this series, we'll invite community leaders and businesses, the arts, nonprofits, culture, and government as we discuss the issues that strike at the heart of the Chamber's mission for the greater good of our parish. Topics such as workforce development, education, quality of life, economic development, and more. Ouachita One Table. This podcast is a partnership project of the Monroe and West Monroe, West Ouachita Chambers of Commerce and was produced by Godly Works Productions in the Louisiana Catalyst Podcast Studios at the Benoit Community Center. Now, here are your hosts, Roy Heatherly and Christopher Kelly.